Hey guys, this is an impromptu MOC thrown together at the last minute because this is kind of breaking news. Just came out yesterday that journalist Max Blumenthal, who you guys have heard me talk about, I reference his material a lot. Great journalist, writes for the Grayzone, co-created the Grayzone or created it or whatever. His work is second to none. His best known book is probably Goliath, but he had a new book that I covered. I've had him on the show. He has a new book called Management of Savagery. Anyway, he was arrested this past weekend in his Washington, D.C. home without warning in a SWAT-style raid with D.C. police surrounding his house and demanding entry or that he come out or they would break the door down. He was then arrested and shackled for something like 20 hours, I believe. He said he spent 2 days in jail, he says, this past weekend without being given his right to call a lawyer or to call anyone. And they're claiming that it's connected to the Venezuelan embassy collective that was, as you recall, several months ago, something like 5 months ago, the embassy collective stayed in the D.C. embassy of Venezuela at the invitation of the Venezuelan government. Maduro's government asked them to be there. And Max was not inside, but he helped get food to people inside. And anyway, they're claiming he assaulted someone. It's a completely false charge, but it seems very clear, like abundantly clear, that the reason this happened 5 months after the actual events is because this is just what is done to a journalist who is revealing the truth about our American government, our American empire. The Grayzone, which also features Aaron Mate and Anya Parampil and Ben Norton, has been very successful since its beginning within the past year. Its videos have been very successful. Its reporting has been very successful. Anya recently did a report that forced the economics minister of the pretend coup government of Venezuela to step down, to resign, because he was also a professor at Harvard. And when Harvard was asked, is this okay for a professor to also be actively involved in a coup in a foreign country? Apparently that pressure was enough to get him to resign from the coup government. And that was done with their reporting at Grayzone. And so these completely false charges, I think they're claiming he assaulted someone, but it never happened. Never happened. And I've talked to Max. I know Max. This is disgusting. This is what we're told to look down on other countries about. We are told, holy fucking shit, they arrest journalists in other countries. And here we are doing the same thing. This is a reprisal against a journalist who has revealed too much about our American government. And, maybe it mainly is around the Venezuela issue, but I think that it honestly, and who knows whether you'd ever be able to prove this, but I think it has to do with the entirety of his reporting. Much in Management of Savagery shows how we have funded Al-Qaeda affiliates, funded and armed Al-Qaeda affiliates, various other rebels, which are jihadist extremists in Syria. He's done reporting on the, fake chemical attacks that were said to have occurred in Syria, but, he and many other journalists, well-known journalists like Pilger and Robert Fisk and Seymour Hersh have also done reports on how those, and they were ultimately proven right because the OPCW now has had leaks that have revealed that these chemical attacks basically didn't happen, and that's another one that thoroughly pissed off the American government. And I think the latest one that they're probably not a big fan of is how we funded and armed many of the militias that are now being repurposed by Turkey to invade the Kurds. So as our mainstream media flips out about the Kurdish civilians, well, guess what? Those horrible extremists that are being sent into these Kurdish areas of Syria, they were initially, many of them, 21 of 28 factions, funded or armed by the United States. Another article that I don't think our empire is very fond of, and I think this arrest was, and again, you're never going to get they're saying this is kind of stems back to an assault around the embassy that never happened. But I think it's much more than that. And I'm just giving my opinion here. It just seems like a political reprisal for what Max and the Grayzone has been revealing and reporting. And if our pathetic sham of a mainstream media wanted to act like they have any integrity, they would get furious about this arrest as with any other journalist, whereas they just want to point to some other country. Or like, I don't know if you remember this story that there was a reporter, I think for Univision or something, that went down and interviewed Maduro and just kept calling Maduro a dictator during the interview. And so eventually Maduro was like, get the fuck out, and kicked him out, and maybe held him for questioning and then kicked him out of the country. And our media, fucking hair on fire, Maduro does this to a journalist. Well, here you have a journalist in America being arrested by American police and held for 2 days without a phone call to his lawyer and shackled both wrists and ankles. And that's where is the coverage on our mainstream media? This should be as despicable as they claim these other journalists are, the treatment of these other journalists in other countries are. So, just goes to show we are now lowering ourselves to this level. I mean, of course, the prosecution of whistleblowers has been nothing new. That's been going on for a while, which also lowers us to the level of the countries that we claim violate human rights. We point at them and say they won't allow whistleblowers. They won't allow dissent. But here we are, keeping Chelsea Manning in jail right now, and the prosecution of many other whistleblowers, obviously going after Julian Assange, obviously going after Edward Snowden. John Kiriakou was put in prison. Jeremy Hammond right now. The list goes on of whistleblowers and those who revealed the truth who needed to be locked up for that. And I think to see a journalist, and by the way, many others that are not the mainstream media have come out and talked about how disgusting this is, how revolting it is, how this is clearly abusing the state police powers to go after a journalist, Max Blumenthal. If you want more information on this story, you should read the Grayzone article written by someone at the Grayzone. And anyway, the way to follow all of this, I think, rather than just tell you to go to Grayzone, is twitter.com/Max Blumenthal, MaxBlumenthal. There you'll get all the updates. His top tweet is about the article from the links to the article from the Grayzone. This is going to be a developing story, right? He now has to go to court. They're going to continue to push these false charges about how he assaulted someone at the Venezuelan embassy 5 months ago and apparently just found out about it. Hey, by the way, we're going to raid your house and tell you assaulted someone 5 months ago. Anyway, this is a developing story. I'm going to keep referencing it on my other platforms, on my podcast. But I just wanted to get this out there right now and let you guys know. And, this is one of those things that, like, if no one talks about it, then who knows? Maybe they succeed in locking Max up. But if a lot of people get involved in this, start talking about it, make it a story, it's a lot harder to just disappear someone into the prison system and not talk about it again. It's a lot harder to do that. I think with Chelsea Manning, although they now have her locked up for a separate reason that they've concocted just to keep her in prison, but with Chelsea Manning, she never would have gotten commuted if her sentence. She never would have seen the light of day again if it weren't for the number of people that stood up and demanded her freedom and demanded attention to her case. And none of that would have happened. She never would have been free again if it weren't for people like you and me talking about it, spreading it, sharing it. This is America. It's what America's come to, is arresting journalists. It's incredibly fucked up. Phenomenally fucked up. All right, well, share this and keep fighting.